So I was born and brought up here in Nairobi, and I went to England when I was 21 to study.
Yes.
And I met the person who was going to be my soulmate for the rest of my life.
Yes.
And he was everything. I was a good Mwindi girl when I left here. And when I got there, I met this Muzungu guy. And he was 19 years older than me. He was divorced. He had 3 children in tow. Now you can imagine, for any girl 21, her parents are not going to accept that kind of relationship.
39, 21.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 40, 21. And but so my mom and dad were completely against it, and I rebelled. At 21, this good Mwindi girl rebelled. It was the first time I really rebelled, and I chose him. Okay. And I was estranged from my family for 12 years. I didn't come back to Nairobi for 12 years. Yeah. I only kept in contact with my sister who was here, and my parents were here. But
I
didn't
come back because you didn't want to, or because even you knew your family did not want you to come back?
I think I wanted to come back when I knew first I had made a success of myself in some way. Yeah. I think that's a very Indian thing and a very African thing. Culturally, we need to achieve. Yeah. But I think I also was not ready to face them and face their kind of condemnation of our relationship. And I was also very young. If I look back now, I would have tried to do things sooner. 12 years is a long time.
Yes.
And so that was my first loss, if you think about it. Because loss comes in so many ways, right? True. Loss comes from losing relationships, from death, from loss of our age, health. If you think COVID has caused so much loss of freedom. So loss comes in many ways. So anyway, we were together, and I came back in 2012 with him because I wanted to show him where I had been born, brought up, studied. My sister is a conservationist here in Samburu. I wanted to show him that. And I called my dad and I said, Nairobi is a small place and the Indian community is very small. Somebody will see me and they'll say, Shalini is in town. Yeah. And so I'm just telling you, I'm coming to Nairobi. And I think by this time my father had aged, he'd mellowed. He said, no daughter will come to Nairobi and not stay with me. Oh. So then he came and he picked me up at the airport, me and Jeremy, my husband. Yes. And they reconciled. We reconciled 2012. And we were very happy as a couple, even with the age difference. I didn't want children. He'd had children. We loved our life in England, but we always knew we would come back here. We wanted to retire in Nanyuki.
With the kids or just the two of you?
Just the two of us. His kids were grown up by this time.
Yeah.
And hey, man, I didn't want any kids. I was like, no, I was very selfish that way. Yeah. And then in 2014, he was diagnosed with cancer. Wow. And it was renal cancer, which is kidney cancer. And it was the most unusual type of cancer. They had no cure. And
that was 2014.
2014, July 31st, 8 o'clock at night. You remember these crazy days and times. And
were you here? Or
we were in England. Okay. In England. And he had just gone in for a checkup. And they said, we think it might be bile stones, but let's just check. Within 2 hours, he'd been diagnosed with this cancer.
Oh, my God.
And I was in complete denial. I was like, no, it'll be a miracle. He's young. At that time, he was 57, which in today's age is still young.
Yes, it is.
So I was like, no, it'll be fine, and we'll throw everything we can, holistically as well as whatever chemo, whatever they recommend. And nothing worked. And for 2 years, I was in denial. When I look back on the pictures of him in the last few months, he was dying before my eyes, but I was not able to see it. I still saw him as that young, handsome man I had met when I was 21. And on exactly 2 years to the day, the last Thursday in July, so 28th of July, 2016, I sat with him in his hospital room. I held his hand and I just said, it's time for you to go because your body cannot take this anymore.
Now you could see him.
I could see that last hour, perhaps, or that last few hours. I could see, but by this time, the oncologist had told us he literally has days, weeks at most. Yeah. But he didn't actually. He had from the time the oncologist said days, he actually had only 72 hours. Okay. Wow. So in 72 hours, that's when I saw. But I still, as I held him and I said, my belief is that you must send somebody on the next journey to the what I believe is the afterlife in as peaceful a way as possible. Yeah. All that drama of don't go. That for me, that's not good for the soul. Okay. So for me, it was very much, Jeremy, I love you. It's time for you to go. that's what I'm saying. Meanwhile, my heart is breaking, thinking, don't go. But I couldn't say that.
Yeah.
And we sat with him for an hour. His daughters were there. And, you can hear somebody's, and I'm sorry for listeners if this is triggering, just hold yourself in compassion, because it's a really tough subject that many people will have gone through. You can tell when a person is dying, the death rattle gets louder. They start losing color. They get cold. Their breathing gets labored. It's very, very obvious. And I just sat with him as he took his last breath. And then I just cried. And it was, for me, it was the most devastating thing to happen in my life. And you never think it's going to happen to you. I was 40. To become a widow at 40, you just don't think you're going to be the one. And I think for a long time it was like, why the hell was that me? Why me? Why me? So that was.
Would you like me to go on a small break?
No, I'm good. I can talk. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I get teary.
No, it's okay.
That's fine.
But so he was the love of my life. I still think of him every day. There's a journey that I've been through since then. For the first year, I grieved very... we all grieve differently.
Yes.
Okay, so that's really important to tell people. There's no right or wrong. So when I look back on it, I was like, was I grieving badly? I was grieving not in a healthy way, because I became a recluse for a year. I drank a lot of alcohol. Literally, I think the neighbors must have thought I had guests every night, because there were literally bottles of whiskey and wine and empty bottles out every day for recycling. And I was taking a lot of painkillers to numb my pain.
Yeah.
And I was eating a lot of bad food. Because if you think about it, you've lost something emotionally, physically, spiritually. So I was trying to fill this void, but numb the pain. And the only way I knew how to do that was with alcohol, with painkillers, and with food. And I don't know how much TV I watched. I used to watch TV because I couldn't sleep. So I would watch TV from 8 in the morning to 3 in the morning, and then sleep for a couple of hours on the sofa. I didn't even go to bed. And actually, the only reason I got up was because I had a cat at the time, Tabasco, and I only got up just to feed him, and then I'd be back on the sofa. And I grieved like that for a year. And then I started writing my book after a year. I came here, I scattered Jeremy's ashes in the Newquay where we wanted to go live. And then I started writing my first book, Always With You. And for me, that was a very cathartic process, writing. And actually, in a way, if I'm really honest, I was writing that book to tell our story, leave my legacy and leave his legacy. And then I was going to take my life. That was the plan.
Wow. That was the plan. So you were like, I write this book, I scatter his ashes, and I end my life.
Yeah, and I cleared the whole house. I gave away stuff. I gave away money in my grief. I got rid of stuff. I got all my affairs in order. And I planned how I was going to take my life.
Spice.
You had just told us that you came to Nairobi, you came to Kenya, and you came with your spouse's ashes. You actually wanted to spread them in Nanyuki, where you two had planned to spend the rest of your life together during retirement. And you had grieved for a year, if I'm not wrong.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, you had grieved for a year, and you were really doing unhealthy grieving, as you called it.
Yes.
And in the process, you're like, let me write a book, and after my book, I'm going to commit suicide and just follow the love of my life. I'm assuming that's what you thought.
That's exactly what I thought. I thought I was going to be with him in the afterlife. I have a very strong belief of that.
So what changed your mind? Or
Well,
what happened that you're now seated with us here together? And which year was that now?
So this is 2017
Okay.
that I start writing the book. 2017 July, I come here, I scatter his ashes, and then I start writing the book in September. And by December, I'm pretty much finishing the book. It just needs editing now, so I'm sending it to an editor. And I still feel like, but as I'm writing it, things are changing. So I remember one of the things that was really important in grief for me was to go for. No, I wrote it in England.
Okay.
I wrote it in England, in the house that Jeremy and I lived in. Okay. And one of the things about grief that's really interesting is it's a very personal journey. So, and different things will help you. And I didn't think writing was going to help me. I just thought I was telling my story. And I remember going for therapy, and actually bereavement therapy helped me a little bit. But I used to come back from the therapist, and as I was driving back home, I'd say, that's the car, that's the road the tree I'm going to drive my car into, or that's the hill thing I want to go over. So I'd start planning it. And I had this cat called Tabasco that Jeremy had got me 16 years before, and he'd got me Tabasco when I was going through depression because of the family estrangement. So Tabasco became like my baby, like my furry baby, because I didn't have children.
So the estrangement from your family also affected
that
you?
I also had depression from that. I was in fact hospitalized with that. So that was my first bout of depression in my late 20s. So one day I was actually, and I won't go into too much detail, but I was lying on the bed and I was ready to take my life. I had everything I needed. And I was like, I've had enough. And Tabasco came and he jumped on my chest. And you know how cats do this kind of poi thing on your, and he did that. And I just couldn't carry on with what I was about to do, because one, he needed me, who was going to find him and feed him, and two, I felt like he had been through loss as well. So that sounds so trivial, but actually that he saved my life. And just as I was finishing writing in December 2017, my mom called and said, your dad has cancer. And my dad had also been battling with cancer, colorectal cancer.
At the same time your husband was battling cancer?
Yeah, exactly the same time. Isn't that interesting that we hadn't spoken to my dad for 12 years, and then my dad and my husband were going through a very similar journey. And interestingly enough, my mom and I were going through a very similar journey. And my mom said, you need to come. The doctors are saying we need to see what we do with Pop and his treatment. So I flew out to Nairobi in December, and I then flew back to England in January thinking everything was okay. And then I got a call saying your dad's taken the turn for the worst. So within 5 days of reaching back in the UK, I came back and he passed away. Just as before I landed, he passed away. So I wasn't there for him. But that was okay because I believed that he was ready to go. I'd said my goodbyes in a way. Anyway, I was standing at his funeral in front of 500 or 600 people. And there was a sudden realization that two men in my life who fought so hard to stay alive. They did all the treatment. They did all the juicing and the
from
Reiki
the medical
and
to
the holistic, to everything, to the point where Jeremy had started yoga, and Tai Chi and everything anything that was going to make him feel better. And these two men had really tried to live.
Yes.
And they'd done everything. And here I had life.
Yes.
I was still young. Financially, I was okay. I was independent. Jeremy had made sure I would be okay because I had the house in England. So he really made sure that I had everything to live for in terms of moving forward with my life. But I couldn't see it. But at my dad's funeral, I suddenly realized I was throwing my life away, and I had no right to do that.
Also, you saw that during your dad's funeral of what your husband had done prior to his death to set you up.
Yeah.
And for you felt like you were all alone and things were not going to work for you.
Exactly. At that, before the funeral, I thought I was all alone. I couldn't live without him. You'll never imagine the loneliness you feel when the person in your life dies, and the loneliness. You start imagining things like I would imagine his car driving down the driveway, or I'd imagine his key in the doorway. That's how much I wanted him to come back. I almost believed that the hospital had made a mistake and they'd taken him somewhere and he was recovering somewhere. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what I was thinking. I was thinking in 6 months he'll come back and he goes, I'm cancer free. I was on a funny kind of retreat. I couldn't tell you. That was the kind of thing.
And is that the part of grief?
It's all part of grief. It's denial. And it's bargaining. It's bargaining with God and saying, bring him back. I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just give me one day with him. So there's 5 stages of grief, and those are 2, denial and bargaining.
Yes.
And depression is another one, and being numb. There are many different stages, but the 5 ones are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then finally acceptance. But I'll tell you, I was standing at my dad's funeral, and I had a very vivid, like it was almost like, when you're watching TV and it was there, I could see this vision of them both up somewhere much nicer than here.
Yeah.
And they had both had beers in their hands, and they were Kenyan beers. So and my dad was really good at doing Indian curry karoga.
Yes.
And Jeremy had learned from him how to do a karoga. So I saw my dad doing a karoga and Jeremy sitting there with his beer waiting to eat. And I was like, they're both out of pain.
Yes.
And they're both at peace. Yes. And they're both together. And I owe it to them to live.
Yeah.
And I am now going to live the best life I can live. Because I don't know if it's going to be a long life.
That was your aha moment?
That was my aha moment. I don't know if it's going to be a long life, but it's going to be a full life. And I'm going to make a difference. And I'm going to live my life compassionately. And I'm going to have so much fun. Because when I meet Jeremy, I want to say to him, okay, you weren't there. You were up here chilling. I was down there having fun.
Yeah.
And that was my aha moment.
What are these fun things that you wanted to go and do?
So you think, okay, I thought, okay, Jeremy was a man who gave me a lot of happiness.
Yes.
So I must find happiness again.
Yes.
So I'm going to find happiness in another man.
Yes.
And as you know, ladies, that's a futile endeavor. Because not every man was going to be like Jeremy.
Or fit in the shoes.
Or fit into those really big shoes.
Yes.
But I was like, okay, I'm ready to date again. And let's see what happens. And I think we can say it's a late night TV kind of thing, radio rather. I was ready to have sex again.
Yes.
And there's a thing called widow's fire. It's actually this burning desire to be touched, to be loved, to have companionship. And it's an actually known thing that widows often, after a few months of grieving, just want that physical, sexual feeling.
Yes. And it's naturally.
It's natural.
Yeah.
And I think, as an Indian woman, as a woman, we're not often allowed to talk about these things, but I'm very open about it because I think you have to be honest about these things because they are the reality.
Yes.
So I decided to start dating. Okay. And just think, I was 21 years old. I met Jeremy. I never dated. He was the guy I slept with first. I never thought I was going to sleep. He was my first. Yeah.
Wow.
So here I am in my 40s now thinking, okay, let's see what I missed in my 20s.
Is this when you wrote that book, Online Dating at 40?
Yeah, it was. So that was my second book. So what I did was, I didn't expect to write the book. I decided, first of all, anybody who knows me knows that I don't just tiptoe into something, I dive into something. So I went on to 6 or 7 different dating websites, and in 7 months, I spoke to like 50 odd guys, and I dated 21 of them.
You have
And it was a lot of fun. I remember this one, and I was a serial date. I was a player.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was like, well, what the hell? It doesn't mean men have to be players only. And I went out there saying I'm going for fun. I'm not looking for a relationship. I've had my relationship.
You were coming from a place where you had a lot of grief, so you're just trying to channel it out.
And I wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
I really wanted to have fun and companionship. And I remember this one time that I was living in Guildford at the time in Surrey. I had a date at lunchtime, and then I had to run for the train to go up to London to have a date in the evening. That was the kind of dates I was on, prolific.
Lunch, another date, evening, another date.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's fun.
I had I think 1 week I had 5 dates with 5 different guys. It was great fun.
That's why they say girls love meals.
Yeah. So I was like, but then it then didn't become fun. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not actually happy, and I'm just spending a lot of money, and I'm not actually finding fulfillment. But then that's when I wrote my second book, Online Dating at 40, Meet the Knobheads, Nut Jobs, and Nice Guys, because there were a lot of knobheads, a lot of nut jobs out there, but there's some nice guys. And then as I finished that book, the realization that hit me was, you cannot find happiness in somebody else. You have to find happiness in yourself.
I wanted to come back and
I love that.
Spice.
Now, before we went on the break, you were talking to us about how you realized after trying to date, going to 50-something dates?
Yeah, yes. But 21 dates.
Yeah, 21,
yeah.
Having five different meals in a week. From different places, you realize that happiness does not need to come from someone, but you have to create your own happiness. How does that go about? Because majority of us end up plugging our happiness to our partners, our spouses. And the worst thing is, especially if you were married or had a spouse and they die, or you lose your spouse in whatever avenue, whether it's a breakup, a divorce, or death, some people feel like that happiness has been taken away from them. What would you tell someone like that?
So, yes, you do look to people for happiness to an extent, which is you should. Connection is a really important part of your happiness.
Yeah.
So I realized that I was trying to look for happiness in these men, but until I was deeply happy and content, not that fleeting happiness that you get from buying shoes. You go buy a pair of shoes. That thrill. That's not going to keep you going. You need deep contentment that actually everything is okay. And if it's not okay, I'm resilient enough to get through this. So I started working on 10 different techniques that I picked from different places. And one of them is mindfulness. I teach mindfulness. And that's a kind of, you can do meditation, but it's also just about living life mindfully every moment. So right now I'm in conversation with you two, and that's what I'm doing. I am not thinking about my journey back home, tomorrow's work, nothing. All I'm doing is talking
You're
to you
in the present.
I'm in
Being
the present.
yeah.
And that's about training your mind. Then dance was one of the others. I was a dance teacher in Just Joom in the UK. So physical movement, eating well, sleeping well, compassion, altruism. We set up a Jeremy Lucas Education Fund, which now has 16 children that we put through secondary and tertiary education here in Samburu and Isiolo districts.
Wow.
So, and in fact, our first 3 students have just graduated from college and university. So
Amazing.
we're very proud of them.
Congratulations.
So yeah, thank you. So altruism, when you are looking at people who have less than you and you make a difference in their lives, because making a difference in their lives means that they will make a difference in their families' lives.
Yes.
It's that kind of domino effect. And then also you need to learn, you need to push yourself. So these 10 techniques I was working on, like I lost fear. You know, when you lose, the most fearful thing to happen to me was to lose Jeremy.
Yeah.
And then it happened.
Yeah.
And I lost my fear for anything I was happy to do. So I learned to ride a motorbike.
Wow.
I went to Sri Lanka and I drove a tuk-tuk around Sri Lanka island. I built a cabin in Jeremy's name in Nanyuki, where my mom now lives. No, I did the planning and everything, but yeah, I'm not that. But still, just doing a self-build was for, we had always thought we'd self-build, and I always said, you'll do the technical and I'll do the cushions and the curtains and stuff like that. And there I am talking about septic tanks. You know, it was just like unheard of. So all these different techniques I started actually building into my everyday life. And one of the techniques is gratitude. When you realize just how much you have, you then forget about how much you don't have.
And
what you've lost.
Yeah.
I
and
love
what you've
that.
lost. Yeah.
Remember we were talking about gratitude yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for sharing your story and continue to share. It's very tearing, extremely, but it's inspiring. And I asked you during the break, and I'll ask you for the sake of the listener. Did you at any one point feel like you've been robbed of because you've worked and you met this guy and then you cosanad with your family because of this guy, and your life, your world has been with this guy, and then nature takes him away from you? Did you feel like, then what was all that for? Were you angry? Were you upset? Do you feel like you've been robbed of?
It's such a good question. Nobody's ever asked me that. It's a really interesting question, because I said you go through these 5 stages of grief, and one of them, the first one was denial, then you have anger, bargaining. And I never, ever got angry. I didn't get angry at Jeremy for leaving me. I maybe got a little bit cross at the oncologist for not curing him. I think maybe it was some anger to myself.
To the world?
No.
Why were you angry at yourself?
Myself, maybe because I was like, could I have done more? And I still have that little bit of guilt. Could I have done more? But the reality is, when I think about it, I couldn't have done anything. It was cancer. I mean, what could I do? But when he died, I was like, I should have done more. So perhaps that anger. But I never felt it was all for nothing, because when I look back on it, he gave me 19 beautiful years. And I have those memories. And I will always have those. Nobody can take those away from me. And he made me who I am. When he met me, I was a ruthless 21-year-old, ready to walk over anyone, to get ambitious. And he wasn't. He was much calmer and kinder and more compassionate. And I always say this. He was really good looking. He was really funny. He was really intelligent. But the thing that got me the most was he was super kind. And he made me a better person. So no, I've never felt angry or never felt like it was all for nothing, because at least I got 19 years with him. And there's so many people who don't. As a result of being widowed at 40, I then met a lot of young widows in the UK. And everybody has gone through such tough times, and some women have only been married 3, 4, 5 years, and then they lose, and they might have young children.
So it's crazy for them.
So it's crazy. So I always think, how blessed am I? And here in Kenya, we have so many issues with widows losing rights, losing children, losing inheritance, losing their bodies. They're sexually assaulted. I didn't have any of that. How lucky am I that I was independent, financially okay, strong enough to then come back and be able to tell my story. I'm blessed.
You are.
Yes.
And not every widow can say that. And I think that's really important. And that's where gratitude comes in. So those 10 techniques really changed my life. And I wrote my third book, Happiness, Is It Simply a Mindset Shift? I believe it is.
What are the other techniques? You've talked about 5.
Yeah. So power your presence. The 3 for your body is like sleep, eating well, exercising. Then there's mindfulness, compassion, and altruism. Power your presence. It's very much about standing up and speaking your truth. And we don't, as women, always do that. We have kind of imposter syndrome, and we don't always speak our truth.
Yes.
And that's really important. So powering your presence, keep learning. You must keep learning and pushing yourself. And I think those are sort of 7, 8 techniques, but they are all linked in. Yeah, gratitude is the other one. One doesn't live without the other.
Yeah.
They really coexist. And so for me, it was very much working. All those techniques work on 3 things: your mind, your body, and your spirit. And that's it. And then the one technique I haven't really spoken about, mentioned briefly, was connection. It's about relationships, making sure your connections are conscious connections. If somebody's toxic in your life, get rid of them.
Yeah.
Life is too flaming short, as I've already told you, and I really know that firsthand. And the other thing, sorry, I keep more techniques. The other one is, you have got to live with purpose. You've got to live your life. It doesn't matter if it's a small difference to one person, make that difference, because that gives your life purpose. And then finally, the whole thing is, for me, happiness is the reason we are here. The Dalai Lama was asked, what is the meaning of life? And he says, that's easy. The meaning of life is to be happy. But what makes you happy? Is it the car, the house, the money, or is it finding that deep contentment, the compassion, the tolerance? And I think as a world, we've lost sight of that.
Let's talk about your afterlife.
Okay.
You have been dating, you've dated 50-something people. You're asking yourself, okay, I'm looking for happiness. Then you realize, okay, happiness has to come from me, start from me, and intentional. When did you meet someone that you felt like, now I am comfortable? I have found someone who can actually maybe give me some peace of mind. Or have you not found one yet?
Okay. I'll be spilling the beans. Yes. So I think 3 years after Jeremy died, I decided I was still in the same house. By this time, Tabasco had also died from brain tumor. And there's a story there. He died the day before what would have been Jeremy's birthday. So I was just like, he was meant to go to Jeremy, because I do believe in the afterlife.
Yes.
Many people don't, but I do believe that there is an afterlife where they are in peace and in spirit form. So I thought, okay, it's time for him to go. Now, nobody really needs me in the UK. And even my business, I was ready to
close it. I love
that
you're saying nobody. Now even everyone, because of the cat, now you drill.
Yeah, no, like Jeremy's gone, the cat's gone, nobody needs me, right? But also I had a small operation, and I remember lying in bed and thinking, I have to go and make my own cup of tea. I don't even have anyone to help me make a cup of tea after an operation. I was like, this is no life to lead.
Yeah.
So in April 2019, I decided, that's it, I'm done. Let me give away most of my stuff. Let me donate stuff, and anything that means something to me, I'll put in storage, and I'll rent my house out.
Shalini, a personal question. Nobody doesn't need you. I remember when you started the conversation, Jeremy had children. Did you have a relationship with Jeremy's children, or it was just you and him?
No, it was very much me and him. They were older. They were all in their 30s, because remember, of the age gap.
Yeah.
So
by the time
time he died, they had their own lives. They had children. And as much as we were close, we weren't that close that they would be, that they would need me or anything like that.
Because now their dad is not there.
Yeah, exactly. So that relationship, I think Jeremy kept that relationship going for us. And after he died, there wasn't really that relationship. So they really didn't need me. And I was like, and actually for the first time after 3 years, I was beginning to feel happy and really feel like I could live life on my own and feeling independent again. Because when I met Jeremy, I was a very independent, strong 21-year-old. I was super headstrong.
You went to the UK alone.
Yeah, exactly. And I was ready to do anything on my own. I just happened to meet him. He was actually the boy next door. I moved into the house next door. So when so I decided rent the house out, and I went to London for 3 months, stayed with family, and I did the London life. And then I came here on the 2nd of December 2019. I came to Nairobi to see my mom, see my sister, be here for 4 months.
And got locked down.
And have a bit of fun. But the plan was I was going back to the UK to drive my car down Europe to Tuscany. I'd already booked a month in Tuscany. And the plan was to meet a nice Italian man, learn to speak sweet nothings in Italian.
Enjoy the food.
Drink Chianti wine. Enjoy the pasta. You know, that was the plan. And the cheese. That was the plan, the gelato. I had it planned. But you know, you say, there's the saying, you plan and God laughs.
Of course.
And in the meantime, I in fact did some work for KTN. I did some mindfulness. And then I was wanting to print my books here in Kenya. So I reached out to my dad's old friend and I said, can you please tell me, because you have a printing press. And he says, look, I don't work anymore in it, but my son does.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh, I know, Amar, your son. I said, we were kids together and we used to play together and we used to be literally in and out of each other's houses. And Amar was 3 years younger than me. So I'm the cougar.
Yeah.
And when he was 10, he had a crush on me. And when I was 13 and I was like too cool for school. So I didn't want to know this guy. Yeah. But anyway, we met up and he said, look, I only have half an hour. He was like, I only have half an hour for you. And I was like, okay, sawa, let's meet at our cafe. So we went, we had coffee and 4 hours later, somehow he managed to have 4 hours.
And he had 30 minutes for you.
Yeah. So suddenly that 30 minutes turned into 4 hours. And we connected. We just really connected. He's super smart. He's good looking. He's funny. Everything that Jeremy was. And he is very kind.
Yeah.
And as much as he has the same qualities as Jeremy, he's extremely different. He's just a different guy. But the qualities were the ones that I had always admired.
A kind man.
Kindness.
What are you hearing, men? Kind.
What is? But then let me tell you, Duchess,
I
sing a song of kindness. Ladies never settle for anything less than a kind man. But what is? Not money. I'm not talking about money, Miriam.
See, they started attacking each other even off. I'm just seeing shadows.
Money, we should be able to make our own money.
Our own.
Yeah.
But kindness is that. For you, what is kindness for
you? A generous person.
Yeah.
What is kindness for you?
So kindness for me is he cares about me. I don't want money, right? And because money can come and go. You can marry a rich man and the next day that money is gone.
True.
But kindness for me is like he'll make a cup of tea first thing in the morning for me, even though he's not supposed to get up.
Yeah.
When I go home now, he'll say, have you eaten? No, let me heat food for you. Or do you want a cup of tea? He'll massage my feet. I know these are silly, trivial things, but they matter. But he is just innately a kind guy. He cares what my day has been about. He's just kind. He wants to know. He wants to know about what makes me happy. And then he will do everything to make me happy. But also I do the same.
Yes.
And also he puts our relationship first. He puts our relationship first above all else. We don't have kids, it's easier. But he puts me and our relationship above all else. And I can't ask, and Jeremy did the same.
Yeah.
I can't ask for more.
Yeah.
Right? So he's in that way very thoughtful. And he'll never do anything that and if he hurts me, he's quick to apologize. So that's what I want in a guy. And he's super funny. It's very funny.
Yeah.
So anyway, I said to him, look, I'm not staying. I'm going to Tuscany. My ticket is booked 2nd of April. I'm out of here. And he said, wherever you go, I'll find a way to come and meet you. We could even go and live in Bali for 6 months or whatever. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine.
Now when you hear people going to Bali, you know.
And I was like, yeah. And everybody's like, this is kind of eat, pray, love pray kind of thing. Anyway, yeah. And then I was like, I'm going. And then the country shut down.
COVID happened to you people.
Shut down. COVID happened. And Tuscany was the eye of the storm. Do you remember? It was where it was all happening. And nobody could be more happy than Amar about the borders shutting. He's like, you're not leaving. By which time, I don't know if he's listening, but if you're listening, close your eyes, close your ears, Amar. I wasn't going to go anywhere. I had decided to stay with him.
Yeah.
And we've been together 2 years. We have just moved in together, which again is very scandalous. Muindi girl, we haven't got married. But hey, I've never done things by the book. I always believe that people will talk about you. There's a really interesting saying in Hindi, log kya kahenge? What will people say?
Yes, I wanted to actually ask you that, considering you're a Hindi girl. What will people say? I hear my Asian friends, Hindi girl, Kenyans one, they're like, sometimes they've really sacrificed their happiness because of what will people say. You have broken several barriers. Lots from the time you were 21.
Yeah.
How has that journey been with your family?
I think, so as you know, 12 years without my family. I think living in the UK helped because we lived in Surrey and I didn't have to see family, so I could live how I wanted. When I came here, I said to Amar, I don't want to get married again, but I will commit to you as if we're married. But that means Nairobi people will talk because we'll be living. Our community will talk. And he's very strong. He was like, I don't care what people say. Do you? And I was like, I've never cared what people say. And I always say that if they're talking about me, it means I'm living life fully.
Of course.
And the minute you stop talking about me, I need to do something. But jokes aside, I think they don't pay my bills. They don't pay for my therapy. They don't pay for the food on the table. They don't pay my rent.
Yeah.
They have no right to comment on my life.
Yeah.
And things have changed. Marriage is good for some people. It's not for others.
Yes.
Having children is good for some people. For some women, I think it's when women come up to you and go, what's wrong with you? Why can't you have children?
But it's a choice.
And then I'm like, because I don't want them.
Yeah.
But how can you not want them? Being a mother is everything for a woman. No, it's
for
for
some of
you,
it is.
but not for me.
Yeah.
And as long as I can be strong in my convictions, and the reason I'm so openly talking about this for every community and every woman is it's your body.
Yeah.
It's your choice.
Yes.
It's your life. And we were talking about, we want men with money. Actually, the thing that you as a woman must have is financial freedom.
I've seen some of my friends who've lost their spouses start losing hair.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about depression, but I was wondering, can loss, and it's nothing to do with alopecia or anything, but
No.
I've seen them practically just losing hair.
It's a very common thing.
Okay, when you lose someone.
Yeah, because your body goes into shock. So your body copes will cope differently. Now, I'm not saying everybody will go through this.
Yes.
What you must realize is grief is very personal. So some people just lose hair, and I lost a lot of hair.
Oh, you also lost hair?
Yeah. I would wake up in the morning and I'd see like clumps of hair on my pillow.
Did you
and
think
it
you
was
were
not.
sick?
No, I think I knew that my body had gone into shock and that it was getting rid of anything that. Your body needs energy to grow your hair.
That's true.
And the body was just going, I don't want this hair because it just surviving.
It's like
was
it's
taking all my energy.
rejecting.
It was rejecting the hair. My nails got brittle. I was probably also not taking any nutrition in either. So that was another thing. But I went through, hair loss was crazy. And I've recently gone through hair loss. You were asking me because a lot of my photographs are still with long hair and I've had my hair cut recently.
You look nice.
Thank you.
By the way, you really look good.
Thank you. Yeah.
And different.
Yeah, very
like-
different. Yeah, and the reason I cut it was because women's bodies go through hormonal change.
Yes.
And I was losing a lot of hair. I'm going through perimenopause. So I think I was losing a lot of hair. So your body hormonally, when you are, it goes through, grief will create things like cortisol and adrenaline in your body. And the hormone balance changes in your body. So things like hair loss are very common. The other kind of things you have are insomnia. I
Yeah.
just couldn't sleep.
Yeah, I've gone through that too when you get a
Yeah,
loss.
and also loss or any kind of stress will
Yes.
cause insomnia,
Yes.
or sleeping too much.
Yeah.
So then you just can't get out of bed.
So
kind
either of
thing.
the two.
Either of the two. You will have any kind of loss. We're not talking just spousal loss, but if you go through depression of, say, loss of a parent, for example, then you might have with your spouse or partner, you might have loss of sexual libido. So you lose the you just don't
need
want
and
to
the
have
urge.
Yeah, exactly. And also things like weight loss or weight gain. So again, see, you can do either or. It really
Yeah.
depends. So I lost a lot of weight in the first month, and then I started feeding myself and I put on a lot of weight. So those are kind of things. Loneliness is one of the things you go through, and loneliness then causes all sorts of other issues like anxiety, agoraphobia. There were times when I couldn't even get out of the house. Panic attacks. So imposter syndrome. Am I ever going to be good enough without this person? Can I do it? Guilt, fear, all these. You go through so much stuff, and people break out, acne. Your body reacts in different ways. So what I would say to anybody going through loss is, it's okay. Whatever's happening to you, it's not unusual. Go see a doctor and maybe just make sure that that's the reason that you're going through it. And once you start moving forward, I will never move on with my life. I will move forward, because what happens is the grief changes.
What do you mean by move on and move forward?
So moving on means you leave behind something. Okay. Moving forward means you get on with your life, but always with one. My memories are always there.
So you're moving forward, but I'm carrying the memories I had Jeremy.
Yeah. And I'm also carrying the grief, huh? I'll never let that grief go completely.
But how are you managing?
Because your grief changes shape, and your grief doesn't get less, it just changes shape, and your life grows around it. And your life gets bigger. My life has got bigger with meeting somebody else, with the work I do now. So my life has got bigger, the grief has changed shape. And I remember literally, the one symptom you get is your heart actually hurts. And there is broken heart syndrome. It's a well-known medical. Yeah. And so I could feel, it was like somebody was actually piercing my heart. Now when I talk about Jeremy, instead of that piercing feeling, I have an ache. But I actually like that ache, because it means that I once had this relationship with this man. I loved him, he loved me, and I still have that love. I still believe he loves me from a different sphere, and I still love him. Yeah. It's just different. And for Amar, it's been a struggle to understand that, how can I love him as much as I love Jeremy?
I wanted to ask you the same question too.
I think it's possible.
It's different.
Yeah.
I believe Amar is my soulmate as well. Yeah. You can have.
Honey, you want to tell me you have 2 soulmates?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
And I like that. You know why? Because who said we can only have one soulmate? Who said we can only love one person?
Yeah. Our hearts are big enough to love. If you have children, you don't love one child. You love 3 children or 4 children, whatever, right? Yeah. Your heart opens. Yeah. And I think you can really love. But I also want to say to any people who've lost any spouses, a widow, or widower, you don't have to move forward with the relationship. Some people don't want to. They decide to stay on their own for the rest of that too is cool.
Yeah. And that's normal also.
It's normal. So there's whatever works for you is normal.
How do we strike the balance?
Yeah.
In what way?
Let's give an example. Maybe we have an Agnes. Agnes lost the husband called Alex maybe 10 years ago, or vice versa, whichever gender it is. And now they've met someone new. And in meeting someone new, I like the part that you've said, you're going to love them very different, but you're not forgetting the memories.
Yeah.
Now, how do you strike the balance? Because sometimes you might find like your current partner does not understand where you're coming from and might feel jealous or feel like you're holding on too much, yet you have someone new in your life.
So if I'm honest, I'm not sure I could have done what Amar has done, which is accept me with knowing that I still love Jeremy. I don't know if I could do that for a man. So it takes a big person with a big heart to accept that you can love 2 people. And
I like that.
Yeah.
It takes a big person with a big heart.
It really does, because it's not easy.
It's not.
There have been times when he feels like he's competing with a dead man.
Yeah. That is what I wanted to ask. Yeah. Like, he doesn't feel like he's competing.
Not anymore. But he's been triggered even as recently as a couple of months ago.
Because you're running a foundation in Samburu in the name of Jeremy.
Name. I talk about him all the time.
You still have his name. Because initially I thought that was your current name.
No.
But you're still holding his name.
Exactly.
You're building cabins and you're building... yes.
Okay, I did that before I met Amar. But you're right. Okay, so Amar knew my story before. So he had an understanding. And I think he was more compassionate then. Then when he fell in love with me, he found it harder. So we did the work. We went for counseling, we did work together, we talked to each other, and we really did the work. I still am aware I wanted him to come today, but I knew that today could be triggering for him, so he didn't come. So we are very aware of each other. He knows that my work is informed, because I need to tell this story, because somebody might then be able to move forward with their life.
Supports you.
So he supports me. Okay. But what I say to him is, yes, Jeremy will always be part of my life, but Amar is now part of my life. He's not part of my life. He is my life today. Yeah. And the most important person in my life when he was alive was Jeremy. Yeah. Today, the most important person in my life is Amar.
Yes.
And I truly believe soulmates are not just a romantic thing. You could be a soulmate with your mom or your sister, or it's whoever you connect with. Why do we need to limit ourselves to one soulmate?
I like that.
Right?
I really do.
Of course you would like that.
You know why? Because we've been you know why? Because we've been brought up in a society from when we were kids to believe that love is for specific people and specific number of people. And yet
It's restrictive.
Yeah, it's restrictive. And yet I'm like, I can love you, Duchess. I can love you, Shalini. I can love you, Miriam. I love Denver. You know what I mean? Why do we have to restrict it to only one person?
Yeah. I say to myself and I say to people, how lucky am I that not only did I find one good man, I found another good man. How lucky am I?
You are.
And I really, that's where gratitude comes in. I really cherish the fact that I had 19 beautiful years with Jeremy, and now I'm having this amazing time with Amar, and he drives me crazy because men drive you crazy.
It's part of life.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
We fight a lot, which I didn't do so much with Jeremy because Amar is much more opinionated.
You're almost peers.
Yeah, and he challenges me, and I like that. So it's a different dynamic, but hey, I love him.
Yeah.
And I'm so lucky that I have. But I had to do the work. The one thing I really struggled with, even in the dating before with all the guys, was guilt. Am I betraying Jeremy? Am I betraying my love for him?
You used to think
I used to think that, yeah. So when I started dating, I was like, I feel really guilty. I had to speak to my friends and my sister and say, is it okay to date? And they were like really happy that I was getting out there. Then when it took a long, so Amar told me he loved me in March. I waited almost 6 weeks before I told him I loved him because I had to do the work on myself that can I love another man? Will I be betraying Jeremy and the guilt? So there's a lot of work to be done. It's not easy. I'm painting this wonderful picture, but it's not. And there's loss there as well, that loss of, okay, now I'm really letting go of Jeremy in that way. So yeah, it's very complicated.
Spice.